The market on the edge of the galaxy was loud, dirty, and full of desperate voices. Traders shouted, merchants argued, and broken ships were lined up for auction like old animals waiting to be sold. Most people passed them without care, for these ships were useless, scraps of metal, not worth their credits. But John, a human trader, stood in the crowd with sharp eyes. He had been saving his money for months, hoping to buy something cheap that he could fix and sell again. Humans were known across the stars for their strange ability. Where others saw junk, humans saw possibility. A tall alien with 4 arms banged a staff against the ground. "Lot 42, the auctioneer shouted, pointing at a dark, battered ship at the far corner of the yard. The vessel was covered in dust and scars of old battles. Its engines were cold, its lights dead. It looked like nothing more than floating trash. "Starting price, 5,000 credits, the auctioneer barked. The crowd laughed. "Too much for that wreck," one alien muttered. "Not even worth melting down," another sneered. John's heart raced. 5,000 was almost everything he had. But there was something strange about this ship. He couldn't explain it, but it called to him, like a whisper only he could hear. He noticed how quickly the guards wanted to move the sail. They didn't even open the doors to show the inside. It was as if they were hiding something. 4,000, John shouted, raising his hand. The crowd turned, surprised that a human would bid at all. No one else raised a hand. The auctioneer frowned, his eyes darting nervously to the guards. 4,000. Going once, going twice. The staff hit the ground. "Sold." John exhaled, his chest heavy with both excitement and fear. He had just spent almost every credit he had. Now the ship was his. The guards handed him the old access key and left quickly, too quickly. John frowned. Usually guards stayed to make sure the buyer inspected the craft, but these guards walked away as if they wanted nothing more to do with the ship. He walked across the dusty yard toward the vessel. Up close, it looked even worse. Burn marks across the hull, dents in the metal, and cracks near the cockpit glass. John pressed the key into the lock and the heavy door hissed open. A dark smell of rust and stale air filled his nose. He stepped inside carefully. The lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the corridor. Broken panels hung from the ceiling. Wires dangled like vines. It was dead, abandoned, silent. But then, a sound, soft, faint, almost too small to notice. John froze. It was like a whimper, a whisper of fear. His hand moved slowly to the sidearm on his belt. He wasn't a soldier, but years of traveling in the outer systems taught him never to be careless. "Hello?" he called into the silence, his voice echoing through the halls. No answer. Only the faint sound again. It came from deeper inside. He moved step by step, his boots crunching against broken glass on the floor. The sound grew clearer. A small cough, followed by a soft cry. His chest tightened. Someone was here, but why? Ships sold at auction were supposed to be empty, cleared, inspected. So what was hiding inside this one? John reached a sealed door at the end of the corridor. It looked like it had been locked from the inside. Dust covered the panel, but faint scratch marks ran across it. Marks made by desperate hands. He hesitated, then pressed the override key. The door creaked open with a heavy hiss, and there in the shadows of the hidden chamber, he saw them. A woman, not human, but alien. Her skin pale with strange patterns glowing faintly in the dark, her arms wrapped tightly around a small child who clung to her chest, both of them trembling, their eyes wide with the terror. The mother gasped when she saw him. "Please," she whispered in broken standard, her voice cracked, her body shaking as she shielded the child. "Don't call them, please. Don't give us away." John's heart pounded. For a moment he could only stare. He had expected rats or maybe old machines left behind, but not this. Not a living mother and her child, hiding like shadows in a ship that was supposed to be abandoned. The child's eyes were big and wet with tears, staring at him as if waiting for judgment. The mother pressed her head low, ready for punishment. They looked weak, starving, barely alive. And in that moment, John realized something terrifying. This was not just a broken ship. This was a cage. And somehow, he had bought not just metal and wires. He had bought their secret, their lives. The door hissed closed behind him, sealing the three of them inside the silence. John swallowed hard. He was no longer just a trader making a deal. He was standing at the edge of something far bigger, something dangerous, and there was no turning back. The chamber was small, dark, and cold. The alien mother held her child tighter as John stepped closer, her glowing patterned skin dimmed as if fear itself was draining her light. The child buried its face into her chest, whimpering softly. John raised both hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said in a calm voice, though his heart raced. "I'm not here to hurt you." The mother flinched at his words. Her eyes were sharp, full of both fear and fire. "Humans always betray," she whispered. Her accent was heavy, but her meaning was clear. John shook his head. "Not me," he replied. He glanced around the chamber. It looked like someone had lived here for days, maybe weeks. There were empty water bottles, scraps of dried food, and blankets torn from old cargo. "How long have you been hiding here?" John asked carefully. The mother didn't answer, only pulled her child closer. The little one peeked out for a moment, its big eyes shining in the dark. It looked Ed, no older than 5 years, weak and thin. John's chest tightened. They weren't criminals, they were survivors. He crouched down slowly, lowering himself so he didn't tower over them. "I bought this ship," he said gently. "It belongs to me now. And that means you're under my protection." The woman blinked at him in disbelief. "No protection," she whispered. "They will come. They will find us. They always do." Her voice cracked, and tears welled in her eyes. John felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Who were they? Why were this mother and child hiding in a forgotten ship, sold off like trash? Something was wrong, terribly wrong. He reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar. He broke it in half and held it out slowly. The child's eyes locked on it instantly, but the mother shook her head. She thought it was a trick, a trap. John didn't argue. Instead, he unwrapped the piece and took a bite himself. He chewed, swallowed, and then placed the other half on the floor between them. He pushed it gently closer. The little one hesitated, then grabbed it with tiny fingers and stuffed it into its mouth. The mother gasped softly but didn't stop the child. Her eyes flicked to John, confused, uncertain, but softer than before. "My name is John," he said quietly. "What's yours?" She was silent for a long time, then finally, in a voice no louder than a whisper, she said, "Liara." She placed a trembling hand on the child's head. "This is Rin." John nodded, repeating their names slowly so she knew he respected them. "Liara, Rin, you're safe with me," he promised. But even as he said it, he knew the words were dangerous, because safety was something he could not guarantee. A sudden creak echoed through the ship's hull. Liara's body tensed instantly, her arms wrapping around Rin as if she expected soldiers to storm in. John froze, listening. It was only the old Met. All settling, but the way Liara reacted told him everything. They had been hunted before, many times. He leaned back against the wall, his mind racing. If he reported them, maybe he could get a reward. But looking at the small child's fragile face, he knew he never could. And if the pursuers were powerful, then keeping them hidden would put him in danger. Still, John wasn't the kind of man who turned away from the weak. That was never the human way. "You can't stay locked in here forever," he said firmly. "If someone else finds you, it'll be the end." Liara looked at him with haunted eyes. "Better the end than chains," she whispered. Her words stabbed into John like knives. He realized then, they weren't fugitives. They were refugees, running from slavery, running from death. He took a deep breath. "Then let me help you," he said at last, his voice steady. "I'll hide you. I'll keep you safe. But you have to trust me." Liara stared at him for a long time, searching his face for lies. Finally, slowly, she nodded. Not out of full trust, but out of desperate hope. The kind of hope only a mother with nothing left can carry. John stood up and extended his hand. "Come on," he said. "This ship isn't much, but it's ours now. And no one will take you from me." For the first time, the child reached out a tiny hand and touched his fingers. Liara gasped softly but didn't pull Rin back. And in that fragile moment, the bond began, a bond that would soon be tested by the entire galaxy. The silence in the hidden chamber stretched long. John leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, while Liara kept her child close. Rin had finally finished the ration bar, crumbs clinging to his lips. He looked tired, but safer than before. Liara, however, kept her eyes sharp and wary. Her body was tense like a cornered animal, ready to shield her child even from the human who had helped them. John respected that. He had seen mothers like her on war-torn colonies. They trusted nothing but their own arms. At last, Liara broke the silence. "Why?" Alan, she asked, her voice rough. "Why would a human protect us? You know what it means. They will kill you for hiding us." John studied her face, pale and glowing faintly in the darkness. He shrugged lightly, trying to hide his own unease. "Because I couldn't watch a child starve in front of me," he said simply. "That's all the reason I need." Liara's lips trembled, but she pressed them into a thin line. "You don't understand," she whispered. "They aren't just soldiers or hunters. They are slavers. They want my child, not me. They take the young, raise them as weapons, as tools." Her eyes filled with tears. "I ran. I stole this ship. I hid. But every time they find us again." John's jaw tightened. Now it made sense why the guards had abandoned the ship so quickly. They had known. They didn't care if a human bought it, as long as they got rid of the problem. Liara gripped his sleeve suddenly, surprising him with her strength. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking. "Don't give us back to them. I'll do anything, just don't hand us over, hide us, protect us, even if only for a little while." Her plea wasn't just words, it was the sound of a soul breaking, a mother ready to pay any price to save her child, her glowing eyes locked onto his with desperate fire. "I'll serve you, I'll work, I'll obey. Just don't let them take Rin." John's stomach twisted. He hated the way she spoke, as if her life had no value except as a bargain, as if kindness was something she had never been given before. He reached down and gently pulled her hand away. "No," he said firmly. "You don't owe me anything. I don't want a servant. I want you and your boy to live free." Liara stared at him, speechless. Her lips parted as if she couldn't believe what she heard. Free. The word sounded impossible to her. John sat down on a broken crate, his voice quieter now. "Listen, I don't know how powerful these slavers are, but I've seen their kind before. They think fear and money can control everyone, but I don't scare that easy." Liara shook her head quickly. "You don't understand. They will follow. They never stop. Already, they will know the ship has been sold. They will come for you. For us." Her words hit him like a cold wave. She was right. It was only a matter of time before they tracked the vessel. Maybe hours, maybe days, but they would come. John rubbed his face with both hands. He had wanted a simple deal, a ship to repair and sell, but instead, he had stepped into a storm. Still, when he looked at Rin, curled against his mother's chest, small, fragile, trusting, he knew he couldn't walk away. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on Liara. "Then we'll make sure they don't find you," he said with steady resolve. "I'll hide you. I'll fight if I have to. But you need to trust me, Liara. No more secrets. Tell me everything. Who they are, how they hunt, and how far they'll go." Liara trembled. Her arms tightened around Rin. For a moment, John thought she would stay silent, but then she nodded slowly, her voice low, almost breaking. "They call themselves the Draken Syndicate. They took my people one by one. I escaped only because my husband stayed behind to fight. He never came back." Her voice cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. "They want my son, his blood, his gifts. They will never stop until they have him." John's fists clenched. He felt a heavy weight settle on his shoulders, but it wasn't fear. It was determination, the kind only humans seem to carry when faced with impossible odds. "Then let them come," he said, his voice low and hard. "They'll find out what it means to chase a human." Liara's eyes widened. For the first time, a spark of hope flickered in them. Not full trust, not yet, but something close, and it was enough to begin. John sat in the pilot's seat of the battered ship, the controls stiff under his hands. The vessel groaned like an old beast waking from sleep, but the engines finally rumbled to life. Dust shook loose from the ceiling as lights flickered on, painting the cockpit in pale glow. Behind him, Liara stood in silence with Rin clinging to her side. She watched every move he made, her eyes sharp and afraid. "This ship is marked," she whispered. "They will trace it. They always do." John glanced back at her, his jaw tight. Then let them, he said. We'll be gone before they catch us. He pulled the ship away from the auction yard. The engines coughed, then steadied. The stars spread wide before them as the ship lifted into the cold darkness of space. For a brief moment, there was peace. Rin pressed his small face against the window, staring at the stars with quiet wonder. It reminded John of when he was a boy on Earth, watching the sky and dreaming of the unknown. But peace didn't last long. A warning light flashed on the console. A tracker signal pulsed red. They were already being followed. John cursed under his breath. They didn't waste time, he muttered. Liara's grip tightened on Rin. Her voice was low, shaking. It's them. The Draken ships. They found us. Through the window, small blips appeared on the radar. 2, then 3, then 5. Closing fast, John's hands moved quickly over the controls. The ship wasn't built for fighting, but humans had a talent for making the impossible work. Hold on, he called back. The vessel jolted as he pushed the engines harder. They shot forward, streaking into the empty black. The Draken ships followed, their engines glowing like red eyes in the darkness. They were sleek and fast, predators hunting their prey. John's pulse hammered in his chest. This wasn't just about escaping, this was about keeping his promise. The old ship rattled, warning alarms screamed, but John's focus never broke. He twisted the vessel sharply between drifting rocks of a broken asteroid field. Metal scraped a go. Ainst stone, sparks flying across the hull. Rin cried out, but John shouted back, "Hold tight, don't let go." The Draken ship split apart, circling the asteroid field with deadly precision. John gritted his teeth. They were faster, stronger, better armed, but they weren't human. Humans had always been underestimated, and John had no intention of proving them right. He cut the engines suddenly, letting the ship drift in silence between the shadows of the rocks. The Draken hunters zipped past, overshooting their target. John slammed the thrusters back on and shot out from behind them. For a moment, they were free. But only for a moment. The Draken ships turned quickly, their red beams lighting up the dark. One shot grazed the hull, sending sparks through the cockpit. Liara screamed, pulling Rhine close. John clenched his fists around the controls. Almost got us. But not this time. He pushed the vessel into a sharp dive, weaving through the rocks like a wild animal refusing the leash. Every second was a gamble, every move closer to either freedom or death. Finally, a large asteroid loomed ahead, hollowed by nature and time. John saw the opening just big enough for his ship. He didn't hesitate. He drove the ship straight inside, engines screaming. The Draken followed, but their formation broke apart in the narrow tunnels. One slammed into the rock wall and exploded in fire. The blast shook the cavern, scattering debris. John grinned through the sweat on his face. That's one down. Liara stared at him, wide-eyed. You fight like a human, he finished for her. His tone sharp and steady. The ship burst out of the asteroid's far side, stars blinding them. Only 2 hunters still chased, but they were cautious now. John used the moment to push the engines harder. The vessel roared forward, shaking but alive. For now, they were ahead, but the hunters were still there, shadows refusing to vanish. John leaned back, his breath heavy. We can't outrun them forever, he admitted. Liara's face was pale, but her voice was steady. Then you understand what I told you. They never stop. John met her gaze, his jaw set like stone. Then we'll make them stop, he said, and in his voice was something fierce. The spark of a human who refused to bow. The chase was far from over. It had only just begun. The ship drifted in quiet space after hours of running. The engines hummed low, tired like the people inside. John leaned back in the pilot's chair, sweat still clinging to his brow. His hands ached from gripping the controls too tightly. Behind him, Liara sat with Rin in her lap. The boy had finally fallen asleep, small arms curled against his mother. His breathing was steady now, soft and peaceful. Liara stroked his hair with trembling fingers. Her eyes never left the child, as if making sure he was still alive. John turned his chair halfway, watching her. You should rest too, he said quietly. Liara shook her head, her voice low. A mother doesn't rest, not when danger is near. Her words carried a weight John understood. He had seen that same look in human mothers on Earth. Those who had lost everything but still clung to their children as their last hope. For a long moment, silence filled the cabin. Only the hum of the ship kept them company. Then John reached into his pack and pulled out another ration bar. He slid it across the table toward her. "You need food," he said. "You can't protect him if you collapse." Liara looked at the ration as if it were poison. Her lips pressed tight, but John didn't argue further. Instead, he broke it in half again, took a bite himself, and left the other piece on the table. Ryan stirred in his sleep, and Liara's gaze softened. Slowly, she picked up the piece and ate. John smiled faintly. "That's better," he said. "You're stronger than you think, Liara, but even the strongest need help sometimes." Her glowing eyes lifted to his. There was something strange in them, confusion, maybe disbelief. Finally, she spoke. "Why do you care so much? You could sell us, trade us, earn riches from the syndicate. Yet you feed us, you protect us. Why?" John leaned back, his gaze steady. "Because that's what humans do," he answered. "We fight for family, even when that family isn't ours by blood." Liara blinked, her hands tightening around Rin. The words hit her deeper than she wanted to admit. No one outside her people had ever spoken like that. To the galaxy, she and her son were fugitives, tools, property, nothing more. But this human spoke as if they mattered, as if their lives had value. The cabin grew quiet again. John leaned his head back, his eyes closing for a moment. But Liara kept watching him, studying his face. There was something strange about him, something unshakable. Not strength of weapons, but strength of spirit. Hours passed, and when Rin finally woke, his small voice broke the silence. "Hungry?" he whispered, tugging gently at his mother's arm. Before Liara could move, John was already up, handing him the last of his rations. Rin blinked up at him, wide-eyed. "You give me food?" the boy asked softly. John knelt down to his level, smiling. "Of course, kid. You eat first. Always." The boy's lips curved into a shy smile. He took a bite and then, hesitating, broke off a small piece. He held it out to John. "For you," he said in his small, trembling voice. John's chest tightened at the gesture. He accepted the piece with a nod. "Thank you, Rin. That means a lot." Liara watched the exchange with tears in her eyes. Her son had never trusted strangers, never reached out to anyone but her. Yet here he was, sharing food with a human he had known only a short time. Later, as Rin drifted back to sleep, Liara spoke softly. "You've given him something I could not. Safety. Hope." She lowered her head, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to repay you, John." He shook his head. "You don't need to. Just promise me you'll keep fighting, for him. That's all I ask." Liara's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. For the first time she smiled, small, fragile, but real. "Then I promise," she whispered. Outside, the stars stretched endless and cold, but inside that broken ship, a fragile bond had been born. A bond not of blood, but of trust. And John knew deep inside that this bond was worth more than any credits or riches. It was the reason he had bought the ship, even if he hadn't known it at the time. Because sometimes the universe gave you not what you wanted, but what you needed, and John had needed them just as much as they needed him. The stars outside were quiet, too quiet. John sat in the pilot's chair, his eyes fixed on the radar. The screen pulsed with a single red dot growing larger by the second. The Draken Syndicate had found them again. Liara stood behind him, clutching Rin close. Her voice was low but steady. "They will not talk, John. They will not bargain. They will only take." John's jaw tightened. "Then they'll learn humans don't hand over what we protect," he said firmly. The dot on the radar split into three. 3 ships closing fast. Their engines glowed red like burning coals in the dark. Predators circling their prey. John powered up the old ship's weapons. The controls buzzed weakly, half dead from years of neglect. 2 forward cannons flickered to life, and 1 defense turret rotated slowly, creaking as if it hadn't moved in years. Liara's eyes widened. "You plan to fight? In this broken vessel?" John gave a sharp grin. Fighting's not about the ship, it's about the pilot. Rin stirred at her side, whispering, "Mom, I'm scared." Liara kissed his head softly, whispering in her own tongue to calm him, but her eyes never left John. Her fear mixed with something else now. Hope. The first Draken ship fired, a red beam. Slicing across the void, John jerked the controls, the ship rolling hard. The beam missed by meters, lighting the cabin in red glow. "Hold on tight," John shouted. The ship rattled as he dove between the three hunters. The cannons roared, spitting weak bursts of energy. One beam struck a Draken ship's wing, leaving a smoking scar, not enough to destroy, but enough to make them angry. The comm screen blinked suddenly, a voice crackling through. "Human," a cold metallic tone growled. "You hold what belongs to us. Surrender the mother and child, and we will let you live." Liara froze, her arms tightening around Rin. John's lips curved into a hard smile. "You want them? Come and try," he replied, and he cut the comm. The Draken ships answered with fire. Explosions rattled the hull as beams scraped across the shields. Alarms screamed through the cockpit. But John's hands moved fast, weaving, rolling, ducking. The old ship groaned but obeyed. Liara gripped the chair behind him. "You cannot win," she cried. John barked back without looking. "Maybe not, but I won't lose them either." He cut the engine suddenly. The ship lurched as it drifted dead in space. The hunters overshot, not expecting the move. In that split second, John reignited the thrusters, spinning the ship around. The cannons fired at point-blank range. One Draken vessel erupted in flame, pieces scattering into the void. "Two left," John muttered, sweat dripping down his face. The second hunter fired back instantly, a blast slamming into their side. Metal tore, sparks flew, and the cabin shook violently. Rin cried out. Liara pulled him close, but John stayed focused, his knuckles white on the controls. The ship was dying, he could feel it, but so was his patience. He flipped a switch and diverted power from the life support systems into the weapons. The cabin lights dimmed, but the cannons burned brighter. "You want them so bad," John growled under his breath. "Then choke on this." He fired everything the ship had. Beams tore through the darkness, striking the Sem. Ekin Hunter across its engines, the vessel exploded, shaking the stars. Only one remained, circling like a wounded predator. John's ship was barely holding together, shields gone, hull bleeding sparks, but his eyes burned with the fire of a man who refused to break. The comm crackled again. "You fight well, human," the last Draken sneered. "But one ship cannot stand forever." John grinned through gritted teeth. "Funny, humans hear the same thing in every war, and yet, we're still here." He dove headfirst into the last hunter, weaving between its fire. Liara's voice rose behind him, trembling but fierce. "John, if we fall together." Her hand gripped his shoulder, and for the first time it wasn't fear in her voice. It was trust. The old ship screamed, the engines near collapse. But John pushed harder, faster, closer, straight into the heart of the enemy. The standoff wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about showing the Syndicate one truth they would never forget. Humans never surrendered. The ship shook like a dying beast, alarms blaring in every corner. John's hands gripped the controls with iron focus. The last Draken hunter circled closer, firing beams that lit the cockpit in red flashes. Sparks rained from the ceiling, smoke filled the air. Rin coughed, pressing his face into his mother's chest. Liara's arms wrapped tight around him, her glowing eyes never leaving John. Her voice trembled but carried strength. "If this is the end, then thank you, human. You gave us more time than we ever had." John didn't answer. His mind was locked on survival. But inside, her words struck deep. More time, more than credits, more than trade. That was what he had bought when he chose this broken ship. The Draken vessel loomed in front of them, red engines burning like fire. The comm crackled one last time. "You cannot run forever. Surrender the child, and you, or death will be quick." John's jaw tightened. He flicked the comm switch and growled, "Sorry, not for sale." With one final push, John forced the failing engines to full power. The ship roared forward, shaking violently as if every bolt would tear free, straight at the enemy. The Draken hunter opened fire, beams shredding across the hull, panels blew apart. Alarms screamed louder. But John didn't stop. He gritted his teeth, his eyes blazing. Come on, just a little closer. Then, he cut the engines. The ship went dead, drifting silent and cold. For 1 second, the Draken pilot hesitated, confused. That hesitation was all John needed. He flipped the manual override. The last reserve power surged into the cannons. The old guns lit up like thunder. Twin beams tore through the void, piercing the Draken ship's cockpit. The hunter erupted in fire, debris scattering across the stars. The blast shook the cockpit. But then, silence. Only silence. The last enemy was gone. John slumped back in his chair, sweat dripping down his face. The ship was falling apart around them, but for the first time since the auction, there were no hunters chasing, only empty stars. Liara's breath hitched, her eyes wide with shock. You destroyed them all, she whispered. John gave a tired grin. Not bad for an old junker, huh? Rin peeked out from her arms, his small voice trembling but full of wonder. You saved us, like a hero. John chuckled softly, though pain filled his body. Not a hero, kid, just stubborn. The ship drifted into quiet space, engines nearly dead. John switched to emergency systems, guiding it toward a nearby station hidden in the shadow of a moon, a place where no syndicate eyes would easily follow. Hours later they landed, the hull groaning as it touched the docking bay. John powered down the controls, exhaling deeply. It's over for now, he said. He stood and turned, only to see Liara already on her feet. She stepped closer, her glowing eyes softer than he had ever seen. Her voice broke as she spoke. I don't know what words Huma is use, but my people, we would call you family. John froze, the weight of her words sinking in. Family. Not stranger, not savior, not traitor. Family. Rin reached out a small hand toward him. Stay with us. Don't leave, the boy whispered. His eyes were wide, hopeful, innocent. John crouched down, placing a hand on Rin's shoulder. I'm not going anywhere, he said firmly. Wherever you go, I'll be there. Liara lowered her head, tears falling quietly. For the first time in years, she felt something she thought was lost forever. Safety. Not perfect, not guaranteed, but real. John stood again, his eyes hard as he looked out the small window at the stars beyond. The syndicate would not stop. They would send more ships, stronger hunters. But now, he wasn't just a trader with an old vessel. He was protector, defender, family, and that gave him strength no syndicate could break. The ship might have been broken, the future uncertain, but inside that fragile metal hull, something new had begun. A bond forged in fire, in fear, and in hope. A bond between human and alien, between mother, child, and protector. The galaxy would come for them again, but this time, John would be ready, and the Draken would learn a truth carved deep into human spirit. You can chase a human to the edge of death, but you will never make him surrender the ones he calls his own. The space station where John docked was quiet, hidden in the shadow of a cold gray moon. Its corridors smelled of rust and oil, a place where outlaws, smugglers, and the forgotten of the galaxy came to hide. No flags flew here, no laws were followed, only survival. John stepped out of the battered ship, his boots heavy on the deck. Liara followed with Rin in her arms, the boy's eyes wide with wonder and fear. The docking crew stared at them but said nothing. They had seen stranger sights in this place, and most learned quickly not to ask questions. Inside the station, John rented a small room with the last of his credits. It wasn't much, metal walls, 2 bunks, a flickering light, but it was safe for the night. Liara sat with Rin, rocking him gently until he drifted to sleep. For the first time, the child's breathing was calm, his small face at peace. John stood near the door, his eyes scanning the room. His body was tired, but his mind wouldn't rest. He knew the syndicate wasn't finished. Killing 3 hunters wouldn't stop them. It would only make them angrier. Liara's voice broke the silence. They will come again, she said softly. Her eyes met his, glowing faintly in the dim light. They never forgive, never forget. You should leave us before it is too late. John shook his head immediately. Not happening, he said firmly. I didn't fight all this way to walk away now, Liara. You're not alone anymore. She lowered her gaze, her hands tightening on Rin's small fingers. "You speak like my husband once did," she whispered. "He believed in fighting too, even when there was no chance. He never came back." Her voice cracked, but she forced the tears down. "I cannot lose another protector. Not when Rin still needs me." John stepped closer, kneeling so she had to look at him. "I'm not your husband," he said gently, "but I'll fight the same way he did, because I made a promise, not just to you, but to him too. Wherever he is, Rin deserves a chance to grow without chains on his wrists." Liara's lips trembled, but this time she didn't argue. She only nodded slowly, as if placing her trust into words she could barely believe. Hours later, when both mother and child finally slept, John slipped out quietly. He made his way through the narrow corridors of the station until he reached a small cantina. The air smelled of smoke and metal, the tables filled with smugglers, scavengers, and broken souls. John approached the bar and ordered a drink, but he wasn't here for rest. He was listening. Voices carried in hushed tones at a table in the corner. He caught the word immediately. Draken. John's blood chilled. He leaned closer, pretending not to care as two rough aliens whispered. "They've put a price on the human's head," one said. "Alive or dead doesn't matter. The syndicate wants the mother and child back, no questions asked." John's jaw tightened. It hadn't even been a full day, and already his name was spreading across the underworld. The hunters he destroyed were only the beginning. The syndicate was coming with more, many more. He finished his drink in silence, his mind racing. When he returned to the small room, he found Liara awake, waiting for him. Her eyes searched his face. "You heard something," she said. John nodded. "They've put a bounty on us, not just you, not just Rin, me too." Liara's breath caught. Her hands trembled as she covered her mouth. "So, now we are hunted together," she whispered. John gave a small, grim smile. "Looks that way," he said. "But don't worry. The syndicate thinks I'm just a traitor with an old ship. They have no idea what a human can really do when family is threatened." He looked at Rin, still asleep, still innocent. Then at Liara, her glowing eyes full of both fear and fragile hope. John felt the fire inside him burn brighter. The fight wasn't over. It was only beginning. And somewhere in the dark, the syndicate was already moving, already preparing. But so was John, because now he wasn't just a traitor. He was a shield, and no matter how far the Draken reached, they would never take this family again. The space station woke with noise the next morning, merchants shouting in the market, engines roaring in the hangars, gamblers laughing in smoky corners. But beneath the surface, whispers spread like fire. A new bounty had been announced, and everyone wanted a piece of it. John stepped into the crowded corridors, hood pulled low over his face. His body was tired, but his mind sharp. He could feel eyes on him. Too many eyes, the kind that weighed his worth in credits, not in humanity. At a weapons stall, he checked the supplies. Too expensive. He had almost no credits left. The last fight had burned through everything, and yet, he knew he needed more firepower if he was going to keep Liara and Rin safe. Behind him, two figures muttered, "The human's worth more alive. Don't draw too much blood." John's heart sank. They weren't even trying to hide their talk anymore. The bounty was real and it was spreading fast. He turned and met their eyes. Both were rough-looking mercenaries, their hands already drifting toward hidden blades. John's gaze hardened. "You want the bounty? Try it," he said. His voice was calm but cold enough to make them hesitate. He didn't wait. He shoved past and disappeared into the crowd. Back in the rented room, Liara paced the floor, her arms folded tight around Rin. Her glowing eyes darted toward the door the moment John entered. "What happened?" she demanded. John pulled the door shut behind him. "The bounty's bigger than I thought. Everyone in this station knows about it now." Liara's breath trembled. "We cannot stay here, John. Every face could be an enemy." Rin tugged on her sleeve, his voice small. "Are they coming, Mom?" John crouched down in front of the boy. "Listen to me, Rin. They might come, but if they do, I'll stop them. That's a promise." The boy's eyes were wide, scared, but he nodded slowly, as if believing John's words gave him courage. Liara sank onto the bunk, her face pale, her voice was low. "You cannot fight the whole syndicate, John. They have fleets, armies, planets under their control. What can one man do?" John straightened, his jaw set like stone. More than they think, he said. They've already underestimated me once. They won't stop making that mistake. A sudden loud bang echoed down the hall outside. Voices shout. Boots thundered against the metal floor. Liara's face went white. They found us. John grabbed his sidearm, pulling Liara and Rin toward the back wall. The door shuddered under the weight of someone trying to break it open. Stay behind me, John ordered, his voice steady. Liara's hand grabbed his arm. Don't do this alone, she said fiercely. Her eyes blazed with something new, not just fear but defiance. The door burst open. 3 mercenaries rushing inside, weapons drawn. John fired first, a sharp blast of light cutting through the smoke. One mercenary fell instantly. The others charged forward, blades flashing. John ducked, slammed one into the wall, disarmed him with a sharp twist. The other raised his weapon toward Liara and Rin, but before John could move, Liara lifted her hand. Strange light flared across her skin, glowing like fire. A wave of energy slammed into the attacker, throwing him across the room. The mercenary crashed into the wall and lay still. John froze, staring at Liara. What was that? He whispered. Liara breathed heavily, her glow fading. My people are not weak, she said softly. They wanted my son because of this gift. He carries it too. John's eyes shifted to Rin, who clung to his mother with wide eyes. The boy didn't understand the power he carried, but John did. And so did the syndicate. He holstered his weapon, his mind racing. Then we need to get out of here, he said firmly, because this bounty isn't about survival anymore. It's about stopping them before they take what isn't theirs. Liara's voice was quiet but fierce. Then we fight together. John nodded, his eyes burning with determination. For the first time, it wasn't just about protecting them. It was about striking back, and somewhere, far across the stars, the syndicate would soon realize they hadn't just put a price on a mother and child, they had declared a red war on a human who refused to lose his family. The air in the station turned heavy after the fight. The dead mercenaries lay on the floor of the small room, smoke still curling from burned walls. John wiped sweat from his brow, his sidearm still hot in his grip. Liara's hands shook as her glow faded, leaving her pale and weak. Rin clung to her side, his wide eyes staring at the bodies. Mom, are we safe? He whispered. Liara kissed his head, forcing a calm voice. Yes, little one, we are safe. For now. But John knew better. The noise of blaster fire would spread quickly. In a station full of bounty hunters and smugglers, silence was worth more than gold, and silence was gone. We can't stay, John said firmly. They'll send more. Maybe 20, maybe 50. We won't last another hour if we wait here. Liara nodded, her breath uneven. Where will we go? John's eyes narrowed. Back to the ship. It's broken, but it can still fly. Once we're in space, they'll have a harder time trapping us. The 3 slipped into the corridor, moving fast. John led the way, his weapon drawn, his eyes scanning every corner. The station was buzzing now. Alarms blared, footsteps echoed, doors slammed shut. Whispers of the human, the fugitives, drifted through the air. They passed through a crowded market. Merchants packed up their stalls quickly, hiding from the coming storm. Eyes followed them, some filled with fear, others with hunger for the bounty. A tall alien stepped in their path, raising a blade. John didn't hesitate. One sharp blast dropped him to the ground. The crowd gasped and scattered, giving them space. Move, John barked, pulling Liara and Rin forward. They ran through the twisting halls, the sound of boots pounding behind them. Syndicate mercenaries were closing in, their shouts echoing through the metal corridors. At a junction, a group of armored hunters appeared, blocking their path. Red visors glowed as Pawns aimed at them. John cursed under his breath. Trapped. But Liara stepped forward, her eyes blazing faintly. Stay behind me, she said. Her body glowed brighter, light spreading from her skin like burning fire. A wave of energy blasted forward, slamming into the mercenaries. They staggered, blinded, weapons clattering to the floor. John seized the moment, firing shot after shot until the hallway cleared. Liara fell to one knee, gasping, her glow flickering out. John grabbed her arm, pulling her up. You're strong, but don't burn yourself out, he said. She nodded weakly. For Rin, I'll give everything. The docking bay loomed ahead, but it was chaos. Bounty hunters swarmed the hangar, ships powering up, mercenaries shouting orders. The bounty wasn't a rumor anymore. It was a hunt, and they were the prize. John's eyes darted to their old vessel sitting at the far end. The hull was scarred, engines patched, but it was theirs. Stay low, stay close, he muttered. They slipped into the shadows of crates and cargo, weaving through the chaos. Rin stumbled once, nearly falling, but John scooped him up in one arm. The boy clung to him, whispering, "Don't let them take us." John's voice was steady. "They'll have to kill me first." Halfway across, a shout rang out. "There! The human!" Dozens of eyes turned toward them, weapons raised. The bay erupted in fire, blaster bolts raining across the metal floor. John dashed forward, returning fire as sparks exploded around them. Liara shielded Rin with her body, running beside John as fast as she could. At last they reached the ramp of their ship. John shoved them inside, firing wildly to cover their retreat. The ramp slammed shut behind them. "Strap in!" he shouted, sprinting to the cockpit. Blaster fire rattled the hull as he powered the engines. The ship roared, shaking violently. Hunters scrambled across the hangar fin, ring everything they had, but with a scream of thrusters, the vessel lifted off, tearing through the station's magnetic shield. Stars exploded into view. The station shrank behind them, lights flashing like angry eyes. Dozens of small ships launched in pursuit, but John grinned through the sweat and smoke. "They want to chase? Fine, let's give them one." Liara staggered into the cockpit, Rin clutching her arm. Her voice was hoarse but fierce. "We cannot run forever, John." John's eyes burned as he pushed the throttle forward. "Then we stop running. Next time, we hit back." The ship leapt into the black, carrying with it not just fugitives, but a promise of war.